I coached a doctor a while ago who could never manage to leave when she was finishing her shift as duty doctor, because every time she went to check on a patient or just go to the loo, she'd come back and find a new prescription she needed to sign. Now, it turned out there was a pharmacist who came in and processed the prescriptions in the evening because it suited their schedule. And in reality, these prescriptions didn't need to be signed straight away, and it wouldn't have made a difference to the practice if she'd left it for the next doctor. But she felt that if she didn't do it now, it wasn't going to get done. And she was worried that somehow colleagues would think that she hadn't done her job if there were loads of prescriptions left in the morning. So this week, I'm bringing Corrina Gordon-Barnes back on the podcast to talk about this mindset of, if I don't do it, who else will? We look at some real-life scenarios where even the thought of saying no would be unthinkable. And Corrina offers us a thought exercise that you can try to get a grip on the real consequences of setting your boundaries. Often, they're not as life and death as we think. Now, Corrina will be speaking at our next FrogFest virtual event in November, so follow the link in the show notes to book your ticket or catch the replay.
I'm Corrina Gordon-Barnes. I am a trainer for Shapes Toolkit, and I am an executive coach. Work with lots of different executive senior leaders on resilience, well-being, productivity, and all sorts. Relationships.
Oh my word. It's good to have you back, Corrina. I've lost count of how many times you've been on the podcast. You're a very favourite FrogFest guest as well. You're coming to our next FrogFest virtual, and you're the person that I turn to when I have tricky questions, right? So I'm going to just dive straight into the tricky question, if that's okay. Because we do lots of training, obviously, on how to set boundaries, say no, deal with pushback. Because in my opinion, this is the only way that we can protect our time, manage our energy, and embrace our capacity and actually stay performing well. So I'm not going to use the R word. I'm now talking about protecting your time. But of course, when we talk about this, we get pushback. We get pushback from people. And one of the most common bits of pushback, either live in the room or questions in the chat we get, is something along the lines of, but if I don't do it, who else will? Someone's got to do it. Surely I'm just passing stress on to the rest of my team. That's all very well, but I can't dump on my colleagues. So we have some sort of version of the question, well, if I don't do it, no one will, or who else will, or someone else has got to. And so you're assuming that what's happening is you're not doing it, therefore somebody else has to, you're passing on stress to everybody else. And for doctors and healthcare professionals who, let's face it, a lot of their raison d'etre is to help people to serve, that is just far too uncomfortable. And that is where the boundaries crumble and they can't then protect their time and their energy. So how would you approach that question? Oh, can we just have the very simple answer, one line answer, then we can all go home, right?
We're finished, right? Yeah,
we're finished.
It was interesting the way when you were kind of embodying someone asking that question, I got a sense of the panic that can be behind this question. Because we are actually talking about survival situations. With healthcare, with medicine, the stakes are truly high. I work with all different industries, and sometimes it's not a life or death situation. But in medicine and healthcare, it is life and death situation often that we're dealing with. So I think that's the first thing to acknowledge, just how much you're carrying to even be asking the question, and how natural and understandable the panic, the fear response is given those stakes. And I think that's really important because we don't want to bypass the reality of what we're actually talking about. These are patient lives. And, as a patient, I would love for all doctors to say yes all the time to everything, and all healthcare professionals to say yes all the time to everything, so that we have this completely 24/7 service where everyone's health is being taken care of all the time. And healthcare professionals are humans and they have limits. And actually, I don't want a depleted, burnt out healthcare professional in front of me. That's not good either. So I think it's really important to see that inaction can cause life and death situations, but also burnout can cause life and death situations. So by people over functioning and being over responsible, there is also a danger in that. So I think that's really important. I think it's also really important that we acknowledge how much people are caring about their colleagues, that people are not selfish, isolated, like islands. They are thinking about, wow, we as a collective, how on earth are we surviving this ridiculous, impossible system? I care about my colleagues. So, well, I'm just going to put myself kind of down the bottom of the list and do the things so that other people are going to be okay. And it's an overused metaphor, but of course we're not then putting on our own life mask.
And I absolutely acknowledge a lot of these are life and death situations, but most of them aren't.
Yeah.
Most of them aren't. I think in healthcare, we like to think we are so important. We are so important that everything we do has a potential consequence, but it doesn't. And I can talk about the poll that I've done, 1,000 times in different talks and things like that is, what will the consequences be of not saying no? What's stopping you? And when I've asked them, and we can talk about some of the other things that stop us in a minute, but less than 20% of people have said it's because it would cause severe harm to patients. And when you think about all the decisions and the times you're going to say no in a routine day, I would think it's definitely less than 20% of those would cause direct patient harm. Now, almost any decision in healthcare, you could probably extrapolate to have dreadful causes. So, what if you, don't answer the phone at the right time, then someone could be really ill and they haven't been able to access the surgery and then they might die. Or what happens if the on-call list accidentally forgets to phone somebody back, then this. So you can sort of, everything in healthcare you can extrapolate to, and that could have a dreadful consequence. But the ones that actually have the immediate consequences, very few.
And connected to that is the fact that because we evolutionarily have these instincts around the tribe, the group, the community, it can feel like life and death when it's actually that someone's going to be a bit pissed off with us. And so that does still feel like life and death because it feels like we're going to be disapproved of, we're going to be disliked, we're not going to feel part of the community, we're not going to feel part of the team. And so we do overextend and overfunction in order to get people's approval. And that is such a beautiful area to work on within ourselves, within our own personal growth. Can I sit with the discomfort of that person's really annoyed with me? That person thinks I'm not pulling my weight. When in reality, what's happening is I'm just checking in with myself, finding that I don't have the resources to do the thing and just naming that. It's like I've gone to my car. I know that I've got a journey to Manchester. I've gone to my car. There's not the petrol in the tank. And I know there's no petrol station between here and there. So I'm simply reporting. I've checked in. I don't have the availability for that. It's not personal. I just don't have that right now. So I'm going to say no because that's the honest answer based on my availability and my capacity.
I think that is one of the underlying problems, actually. And it's this question has got so many layers in it, doesn't it? Because, yeah, that's really logical. I've checked in. I don't have the capacity. If only we were like a car. If only we did actually have, like, on our foreheads, a little thing going full, empty, then not only would we know, but everyone else would know as well. I think the problem is in healthcare, a lot of us don't know when we're empty, and we are so used to running on empty that it feels normal. So then we fool ourselves into thinking that I'm running on empty, but actually no, I do have fuel in the tank. Therefore, I'm just saying no on a whim. And that feels really selfish.
So in that, then it would be a matter of developing more inner awareness of what does feel like full and what does feel like empty. We in the Shapes Toolkit have that lovely exercise where we have participants actually rate different aspects, and we do use a petrol gauge, don't we? Like a fuel tank full, a fuel tank empty. And it could be that becomes a really important practice for people, just to have a snapshot now and again of, hang on, where am I with my compassion? Like, for a lot of people, that's how they know that they're depleted, is when they don't have compassion. They have that empathy, that compassion fatigue. They just don't actually care anymore, which feels so horrendous to someone whose whole profession is around caring. I don't actually give a shit, really, because I'm so depleted. So that can be a real red flag for people when they start to feel that going down. And then just, energy level, brain power, capacity. To develop ways of self-analyzing and self-assessing. Do I actually have anything left in the tank?
But that is so alien to us, because our training and everything in us says it just actually doesn't matter how you're feeling. This is your job. This is your role. And it might not even be your role, but we've actually been trained to feel that if no one else is going to do it, we've got to do it. Yeah, I remember when I was a junior doctor, I was on coronary care, and all the nurses suddenly decided that their phlebotomy certificates had run out. So who's going to do the blood round? Well, they didn't go, well, we've got to sort out the problem. It's like, bleep the junior doctor, Rachel, you're doing it. And that is literally how most doctors have then grown up, and then you become more senior. And of course, the buck stops with the senior person, you have to do it. So you've always felt that the buck stops with you. So even if it's not your role, you end up feeling like, well, I ought to, or I'm the partner in this practice, so I ought to, I'm the clinical lead here. There's going to be dreadful consequences. No one else is going to do it. I've got to, or other people could do it, but I can't possibly ask them to take on stress that I'm not happy to take on. And I think that's much more of a motivator than thinking, well, I'm out of fuel. I can't.
Yeah. So there's something about being that our responsibility is to be a sustainable instrument for our craft, whatever it is. Me as a coach, people as doctors or nurses or professionals in other healthcare settings, that my responsibility then, part of my ethics is to be asking myself that question of, do I actually have capacity? Am I nearing burnout? Am I beyond burnout? And I think there's a very important belief to question. We have the assumption that it's bad to say no to something. If I say no then, and what's going to happen after that? How would we finish that sentence? And it can be very helpful to question that. Can I really know that it is going to be bad if I say no? Could it be that there is another way of looking at it, which is that we have this very broken system? I think everyone can agree with that. I'd love to hear if any listeners or viewers don't agree with that. But I think
Corrina, NHS is working brilliantly at the moment. Yeah. It's all fine.
Yeah, yet to meet a person who even thinks that. So I think we all agree it's dysfunctional. And there's this kind of belief that somehow dysfunctional systems, if we all just kind of silently suffer and kind of shuffle things around, then we'll all just kind of muddle through. And we see this in dysfunctional family systems, even that it might be just that someone needs to be that canary in the shaft, the person that is like, I'm not going to silently suffer anymore. I'm going to name something, or I'm going to pull back from saying yes, so that there's even more chaos to start with, but that actually maybe could lead to something more functional having to arise as a result. So that question of, could it be that me saying no is part of helping this system to become more functional?
Totally agree with that. And absolutely in the workshops and when we do the Shapes Toolkit, we have people saying, what am I choosing to do so that, and people know that if they keep saying yes in the system and they keep absorbing the thing, no one's going to sort it out. And that's partly why we're in this problem, because I think, if you can imagine a big sink and patient demand being like a tap, which is filling up the sink, and you've got a few outlets in the tap, you've got secondary care, you've got like your overflow thing, you've got primary care, which is basically your overflow. Primary care does most things. In fact, it has, I think something like 90% of the patient contacts in the UK are in primary care. It gets 8% of the budget. 8% of the budget is shocking. Anyway, primary care, by people overworking, has absorbed the stuff, but they are at capacity. They are so at capacity that now the water is now going over the sink and it's overflowing. And so while the water wasn't overflowing, no one was doing anything. Now it's overflowing. It's almost a little bit late. There are things going on trying to happen. So I don't think anybody disagrees that we can't just keep absorbing it, because then the system won't change. And at our best, we can believe that and say no. The problem is the system's out here, isn't it? But the patients are here and our colleagues are here, and they're also working in the stressed out system. So if I say no, then my assumption is, well, that means work gets dumped straight on my colleague who's as stressed as me, who's going to find it as stressful as me to do that work, and that it has to be done now. Those are all assumptions which I guess we could challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could definitely question the assumption that they will take it on or have to take it on, because they are also an autonomous being who gets to make choices, hard choices. We're talking about very, very hard choices. And, whenever we do these podcasts, there's always just it's the impossibility of the situation that always needs to be acknowledged, that there's no glib response or da-da-da-da. Like, I'm not coming onto this podcast saying, by the way, guys, I figured it all out and you've all been doing it wrong all this time. It's like the opposite of that. It's like, what is all of this? And I am responsible for myself. I am responsible as an independent human being for my choices, as uncomfortable as they are. My colleagues are also responsible for their choices, as uncomfortable as they are. And when my colleague makes a choice that has an impact on me, I feel that impact, but it's still their choice. And then I have a choice about how I respond to the impact on me. So I think that is very important, that we only own what is ours to own, and we sit in the discomfort of what is not our own. And I think I've used this word discomfort quite a bit already today, because I feel like that's really key, that there is just going to be a lot of discomfort. And if we can grow our tolerance with discomfort, that will serve us well.
And I think this is key to it, isn't it? I think there are two different hours to own, though, and two different types of discomfort, because there are things that I'm not in control of. And I talk about these control responsibility mismatches. And if we talk about the zone of power, so what am I in control of? What am I not in control of? And you just draw a circle on a piece of paper. So what I'm in control of is in the middle. What I'm not in control of is on the outside. I think we can often feel incredibly guilty for stuff that is outside of our control. Now, the traditional teaching is we feel stressed and frustrated and stuff, but actually with healthcare professionals, the more senior they are, the more guilty they feel. So, Corrina, I might feel incredibly guilty that you can't get that appointment you've been waiting for at the hospital. I have absolutely no control over that, but I just feel guilty. And then if a patient presents with this extra problem and I'm not on duty and someone's just asked me to see them as a favour, I'm not in control of that person coming. I can decide if I could say yes or no. And I would still feel guilty for saying no, but it would be a little bit easier because I'm sort of not in control of when the patient came in and I'm always, doing them a favour. So there's that stuff outside our zone of power that we sort of overreach on and feel over responsible. My issue, Corrina, is the stuff that's inside our zone of power. So I was doing a training session recently and we were talking about, the fact that you can really care about that stuff that's outside your zone of power. You can't carry it though if you can't do anything about it. But then this chap put his hand up and said, well, I get that. And so I'm really focusing on what I can control and what I can do. So I'm sitting on this committee, I'm doing this, I'm running this service, I'm doing this, like 6 or 7 different things all at once. This was outside of the day job. And I just said, well, how's that going for you? He went, not very well. Because he was so overscheduled. So I've begun to realise, I'd be really interested in your thoughts of this, that there is so much stuff we could do within our zone of power. We can't do it all. And that's where you actually need a smaller circle within your zone of power, which is your capacity. And I think this is what healthcare professionals find really hard to do, is say no to things that they could do that's within their zone of power, that is in their control, but it's not within their capacity. And that where's your capacity? It's a bit of a blurred line or whatever. But if you then, you can go way over capacity and end up saying, yes to everything. And that's what feels really, really hard, is actually, I could do that little extra thing. I could do it, but I really don't have capacity to, but it is in my zone of power. Therefore, I feel that I ought to. And that feels really, really uncomfortable, particularly when that other person also has a finite capacity. Now, again, I think that is an assumption. And I think one of the issues, I think, that with this question is that we're looking at it in a very black and white binary way. If I don't do it, someone else has got to do it. There's either I do it or I don't, or someone else does it. Actually, I think what I'm trying to find out is there a third way? Is there a third way that isn't this binary black and white and I've taken control over that and have my capacity because it really does affect somebody else who's got the similar capacity? That just feels too awkward because it was in my zone of power and I could have done something. It's hard enough letting stuff go that I couldn't have done anything about, yet alone stuff I could do something about. Sorry, that was a bit of a long rant, but does that make sense?
Well, it does, because it's about, again, I'm going to keep, I think, pulling us back to like checking in with myself, doing that, developing a practice around self-assessment, because if you've got those items on your zone of power list, all of the things I could do, but you are checking in with yourself, not with anyone else, not with what's needed, but with yourself. Is this something that I have capacity for, I have availability for, I have choice around? Because that then is our come from, not guilt or fear or panic even. But we have to keep developing this. It's not a normal practice, but to develop the practice of self-check-in. Is this within my capacity? Is this sustainable for me? Is this a choice, an intentional choice that I'm going to make? Because when we make choices, then we don't have resentment because we've chosen it.
I think people think that they don't have any choice because the doctor in me is going, yeah, I know that's all very good, but it just feels so selfish to keep going, I'm checking in with myself and no, I'm checking with myself and no. Because actually, if everyone just checked in with themselves all the time and said no, literally you wouldn't have a health service.
And maybe that's the point. That's the point about what if saying no was important to fully break the system. We're all quite scared, aren't we, of systems falling apart. I can really see that if we look at education system, even though we know it's dysfunctional, family systems, even though we know they're dysfunctional, political systems, how bad do things need to get? I mean, we're seeing that played out on the political stage at the moment, but maybe things do have to get that bad before they can get better. And so me saying yes isn't actually necessarily helping the bigger picture.
But then it's the bigger picture versus the smaller picture, isn't it? And it's the people. And yeah, I think people are accepting of the fact that the system, something drastic needs to happen for anything to happen. But it's these people in front of you. And I think one thing you said was really interesting, Corrina, which is that the assumptions that we're making that saying no is bad. And I wondered whether we could dig into that a little bit more and think about even maybe using the work or some of those amazing questions that you asked to help. How can we challenge our assumptions and look at things the other way rather than make the immediate assumption, which I think our amygdala makes us think, like you said, threat. We're scanning for threat constantly. Oh, if I say no here, then it's going to absolutely ruin my relationship with everybody else, or it's going to cause other people inconvenience. It's going to be awful. So yeah, would that be a good way to try and tease this out?
Yeah, great. And before we go into the work with it, seeing how in so many situations we have that, like saying is bad, right? Saying to my intimate partner or my child or my friend, or just so many places where we have the assumption that saying our truth, which is what it is, speaking our truth is bad. And so let's go into it. So the work of Byron Katie is what you're inviting us to use, which is a way of questioning assumptions, questioning beliefs. So we hold this thought, saying no is bad. And we just have it it's just a default. It's an assumed, saying no is bad. So the first thing we do is we test the truth of it. It's like we put it under the pressure of our questioning. Saying no is bad. Is that true?
Okay, this situation actually happened to me. I was a GP quite a few years ago. A mum came in for her twins' immunisations. There wasn't a nurse on that day. The receptionist had mucked up. There wasn't a nurse on. And I was the duty doctor, and the request came to me, please can you do the IMS for this patient? And I wasn't trained to do the IMS or whatever. Obviously I know how to do injections, but I wasn't up to date with it all, whatever. And I was expected to do these immunisations. The mum was really distraught because, it's really hard with twins. It's hard with one baby, let alone two. So she's knackered. She'd struggled through the traffic to get in. It was a really big deal. I think the IMS had already been delayed. And I was under a lot of pressure to fit this patient into a busy thing and to do these immunisations.
That's a great example. And I felt, as soon as you said mum, as a mum myself, as soon as you literally said the word mum, I was like, because we have that. It's so inbuilt. Like, you can't say no to a mother with children who needs something for her children. That's the most emotive thing. Great. So saying no is bad. So we have to meditate on this. We can't just answer from our fast brain. We have to sink in. We have to visualize the moment. You can actually visualize it, but we can all imagine whatever we're going to make it up. So saying no to that mother to immunize her children in that moment is bad. Maybe I would even say it's wrong. Like, that's the kind of, like, our thinking will go like, no, you just can't do it. It's bad. It's wrong. Is that true? And we sink in and we're asking like a deeper part within ourselves, not just our brain. We're asking our whole system, like head, heart, gut, all of our body. Is that saying no is bad? Is that true? And we just wait until we have a sense of a yes or a no.
When it was immediately presented to me, I think it would have been a yes.
And now if you step into that observer position within yourself, Might still be a yes, but just give yourself a moment to question it.
Well, no, in the observer position, it's a no.
Okay. And I found a no when I sat with it. Now, if we found a yes, this is so everyone can do it at home. If you found a yes, then you may have found a screaming yes, like, Rachel and Corrina, what are you talking about? Of course it's a yes. These poor... Right, okay. Then you say, can you absolutely know that it's true? Which isn't a trick question. It's a chance to go deeper again and just say, like, can you know the biggest picture of all of it? Can you know these children's full lives, this mother's full life? Can you know better than whatever you perceive as God, the universe, higher power? Can you know better than all of it? Can you individual person, know that it is true that saying no is bad?
Categorically. No, because you can never categorically really know anything.
Because I've had that many situations in my life where I was sure something was bad or wrong and it should never have happened. And then after the event, like even maybe years after the event, realizing, that's why that was perfect as it was. That's why that happened as it did, because here this situation is now. So we test the truth first. And again, you might get a really clear yes for the second question. That's fine. This is just giving you a chance to question. And whatever you find as the truth for you, you look at how do you react? What happens when you believe the thought? So for you, Rachel, how did you react in that situation when you really believed, I can't say no, saying no is bad?
Oh, well, you felt pressurized into doing it. Well, I have to. I ought to. Like a bit of panic, a bit like this is going to take ages. And also a bit of beating myself up about, oh, for goodness sake, you're such a cow, even thinking you shouldn't, there's this whole, of course you should, this poor woman.
So the panic I'm really interested in. So just notice, when I believe saying no is bad, I'm in my amygdala, right? I'm in my fear-based response. I'm in panic. Thinking about me if I'm thinking about myself as a practitioner, wow, this thought has put me into a panic state and I'm about to pick up a needle. Like they don't seem compatible. So how do I react when I believe saying no is bad? I might get flustered. I might get hot. I might get panicked. Like what else might happen in our physiology when we believe?
We make bad decisions. We rush things. We don't think things through. We make massive mistakes. We're rude. All that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So this is for each person listening or watching to assess that for yourself. What is the cost? What is the impact when you believe, I can't say no, saying no is bad? Because it will have you show up a certain way, and then to assess whether that way of showing up is actually in anyone's best interests. And then when we've really fully looked at that, then we look at who would I be in that exact same situation without the thought saying no is bad. So imagine you just, for some reason, Rachel, someone's just deleted that thought from your mind. You see the mother in front of you. You maybe see the twins crying. The mother's distraught. But you know your capacity and you can't believe that saying no is bad. Who would you then be?
Well, I'd be much more kind and compassionate. So I would be more kind and compassionate. I would be behaving in a way that I maybe thought was less kind. Well, no, I wouldn't be thinking that anymore because that's a thought had been out of my head, but I would be being much more kind and compassionate because I wouldn't be feeling pressurized that I should have done something differently or, so I'd probably just be very matter of fact in that I'm afraid we literally, the fact of the matter is there is not a space for you to have the vaccination. There's no personal, it's not personal.
Yes.
Yes. It's not like I'm choosing not to do it. It's like, it's not happening. There's not an appointment. Can I just break this and tell you the story of my beautician waxing story, Corrina?
As long as you keep it in the recording, yes.
Oh, yeah. All right. So I was at Birdie's the other day having some waxing done before I went away. I won't tell you every tiny detail of it. But I booked my nails, various different things. And I just had my nails done and I was just about to move through to the waxing room. And this woman came in. It was a Friday afternoon, right? She was in floods of tears, like absolutely distraught. I was like, this is interesting, like beautician emergency. What could it be? She's like, sobbing, I'm getting married tomorrow, she said. And my waxer hasn't turned up to my house. Anyway, so, you know, the beautician is doing my nails and stuff. It was so lovely. She walks over to her desk. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me just see what we can do. Let me just check our schedule." So she looked at it and she looked at it again and she looked at it again and she said, "I'm so sorry, we're fully booked." And this woman, "Oh, can't you fit me?" And she went, "Hang on. No, I'm so sorry." She said, "But I can give you the name of someone down the road." And I thought, wow, look at that. Look at that. It's no one's going to die right here. The worst that can happen is she's got a bit of hair somewhere she didn't want it. Certainly no one's going to die. That's just a side note, but it just made me think, oh my goodness, you know, when patients come in, can I just say, much less of an emergency. I'm not talking about these kids with the vaccinations, but, you know, just like, I need a holiday medical done. I need this. I forgot my prescription. Like, no one is really going to die. It's just convenient for them. They want it. They kick up a fuss. Most GPs just fit them in. Even they don't have any capacity. They don't literally have capacity in their diary. It's not like, do I need to check into myself? Do I have time? It's like, no, we literally don't have time. And that will put all the rest of the patients back. But partly it's people pleasing. Partly there's that little niggle of, what if I missed something and it was really, 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 really urgent, you know? But we have this amazing capability of pre-living stuff. So I was in a training session, a shapes training session, Corrina, the other day. And I love in the zone of power when we're talking about what you're in control of, what you're not. And I always pop in what time I leave work. And you can see people going, I'm not in control of that. And I've seen you deal with that before and it's brilliant. But I think it was a load of new first 5 GPs. And it's like, okay, I said, you're in charge of what time you leave work. And they were not happy. And someone said, no, I'm sorry, that I am not in charge of what time I leave work. I said, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. She said, well, if I'm on call and even when the phones go there, if a child comes in, I can't just leave them and not see them. Well, who is in charge of when you literally get up and leave your desk? Well, I said, I just can't leave a child if they come in, you know, late in the evening, because 111 is rubbish in our area. They won't deal with them properly. It's too risky to leave a child. And I was like, that's interesting. And someone else said, he said, what do you do on a Sunday afternoon when there's a sick child? And what about at midnight when there's a sick child? Or on Saturday lunchtime when you're not at the practice and there's a sick child? So there's something about when I'm there and someone wants something, we can't cope because there's just so much need. You know, that sick child on a Sunday goes to 111. So how come they can't do it on a Friday night? But it's like, well, if they turned up at the surgery and they are really, really sick and 111 doesn't work, what happens? And so we can escalate any small situation to a potentially lethal, life-threatening situation. It's quite interesting how we do that. And I think a lot of it is really, really genuine. We genuinely feel this over-responsibility that we are responsible for everything a patient says or does. And if a patient, you know, we don't give patients enough responsibility for their own health.
We'll get to the turnaround in a minute, but what you're pointing to there is that when she said no, when the beautician said no, the system arranged itself better actually around it.
Oh, and interesting, what would have really pissed me off is if she'd have fit this woman in quickly and made me late. Ooh, and I would have sat there going, well, I'm waiting, and made them, you know, whereas actually I was much happier just to say, oh, you have the slot and volunteer, because it was choice, right? It's choice.
So who would you be without that thought? You're there with the mum, with the twins. What I see in you, if I imagine myself in that situation, is I would be able to be more with that mother from a clear place of, like, I really get how distraught you are and how much this means and how scared you are, or whatever it is that you want to say in terms of empathy, compassion, presence, and this kind of idea that we can have both, right? I hear all that, I see all that, I can actually be present with you for all that, and I'm not able to do that right now, or nobody's able to do that right now. Here's the alternative. And then we look at the turnaround, right? So we've questioned the thought, is it true? We've looked at the cost of believing it, who we'd be without it. And then we look at whether the opposite could be just as true or even truer than the original thought. So saying no is bad, we flip it. Saying no is not bad, or saying no could actually be good. Do you see any examples in your situation where actually it would have been good to say no?
Oh, yes, several. Because number one, the nurse does vaccinations much better than me, because they do them every day. So they know all the complications, they give much better counselling, you know, all that sort of thing. So it's much better to have someone who's fully trained and able to do it. So that's the first thing, actually, from patient safety point of view. much better to say no. So that's a no-brainer. Second, saying no is good. Well, it protects me, protects my time for a start.
And then you were then available for other patients.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe you were then more present. If if you'd said no, maybe you would have been then present more cognitively with another patient, and you may have then picked up on something that you just wouldn't have been able to pick up on if you were so frantic and so panicked. Like, we just can't think clearly like that. Who would I want as a doctor? Someone fully present and available. Who would I want vaccinating my child? Someone fully present and available and who was trained to do so, right? And so, yes, it might be inconvenient, but again, we sit with the discomfort of that inconvenience and someone not being happy.
Yeah, and the inconvenience was, I would have felt really bad and really responsible. Not my responsibility. I can't even remember. It would have been a patient diary malfunction or a receptionist diary malfunction or something. Not my problem or not my responsibility. And even if I was a partner in that practice, and this is part of the problem that we get, and I know this being a business owner myself, and you're a business owner, if something goes wrong in your organization, you feel totally responsible for it, even if you couldn't stop it happening. And I see this with, do lots of training with GP trainers groups and things like that. And I start off by saying, in terms of your trainees, what do you feel responsible for? And they're like, well, we're responsible for if they pass their exams, how happy they are, their well-being, what training they get in our practice. And I'm like, is there any of that you've got control of that? Well, we're the trainer, we have to be. I'm like, okay, so how are you responsible for if they pass their exams? Literally, are you there holding their pen, writing their exams for them? Are you there every weekend saying, are you revising? Like I should have been with my son. So even if you do own the organisation or own the business, yes, there are things you can do, like train receptionists properly or have the protocols that are right and run the thing properly. But day to day, what happens in your business, how somebody answers the phone or behaves, or the interpersonal relationships, you can't control. And I think, so it's this double whammy of being a doctor and then being responsible as a partner or as clinical lead or something that really, so I think at the time I was a salaried doctor, I still felt bad enough. I think if I was a partner, it would have been even worse because I'd have felt, oh, it's my practice, I am ultimately responsible. But that's the problem with this control responsibility mismatch. And incidentally, all the research on burnout recently has been that the people who have the highest incidence of burnout, the people in high stakes jobs with low control. That's healthcare. There was another subset of people in high stakes jobs who had high control. They had really low levels of burnout. So that was really, really interesting to me. So I think there is this something about doctors take that extra level of responsibility, either because they genuinely own the practice, their business, or they're the clinical lead or the director. And I think the more responsible they are, the harder they find to say no.
And that's where it comes down to questioning, does this actually lead to more safety? Or does it just make me feel a little bit like a hero or, the one who's going to save the day or the one who's going to, even that kind of like just, I'm the one who's really responsible, but is it actually leading to more safety? Like in that example, is it more safe for those twins to be immunised by you or to wait a day or a week?
Much more safe for them to wait for the nurse, yes.
And we can also turn it around. Saying no is bad. We can look at saying no is good or saying no is not bad. We can also look at saying yes is bad. That's the other turnaround. So saying yes is bad, maybe then something more systemic gets missed, right? Maybe there is a diary training issue, or there's, I don't know, like if it's a patient diary mishap, there's a different reminder system to put in place. But we don't see clearly the problems to be solved if we keep papering them over.
And I think that saying yes is bad, that's a really important turnaround for lots of doctors, because another thing that we teach, which gets a lot of teeth sucking, I wonder if you've had the same experience, is talking about delegation. When we teach the prioritisation grid, and we're like, anything that's not important, that's below the line, but you feel you need to do, eliminate, renegotiate, automate, or delegate. And everyone's always like, oh, no, I can't delegate. Nobody to delegate to. That's what they say, which is just another version of, if I don't do it, no one will, I think.
Yeah, and the turnaround for that one is that, not always, but in some situations, delegating is by far the kinder thing for the other person, because they get to have an experience, they get to have a level of responsibility that they wouldn't have otherwise, they get to step up to something, get exposure to something. So actually by holding everything that like I have to do it mentality is not good for anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And I've found that in my own organisation. Sometimes I've just got on with something and done it just because I wanted it done quickly, or I just thought I was helping out. It's quicker if I did it. And it's totally disempowered somebody else. And it's shown them I don't trust them, or it's given them all these sorts of unspoken messages. I think in healthcare, genuinely often there isn't anybody to delegate to, but I think we do use that as an excuse, because actually we could find people, we need to train them up. And then the problem is, I don't have the time to train them, or the fear of the loss of control, or that, well, I can't really let them do that because what if they miss this and then this dreadful thing? But again, that's where checks and measures come in and processes come in. But, I think that's just what that whole question about if saying yes is bad question got me to. The actual, if I'm saying yes and not delegating or giving it to someone else, quite often that can be bad. And, my daughter had an operation recently on her foot. I would have been really hacked off if the surgeon who was operating on her foot had also had to get all the operating instruments ready and sterilise the operating tables. Because I'd be like, hang on a sec, no, can you do the actual operation? But a lot of the time in healthcare, the doctors, the nurses, the practice managers are doing a load of administrative tasks that other people could be trained up to do and could do with just a bit of thought and attention. And it's completely distracting them from their one main really important job, which for me was that was being on call that day, triaging really sick patients. Yeah, so I got a bit of a bee in a bonnet. We always say, if you're paid really well and you're doing something that someone else in your organisation who's paid less could do, then you're wasting money. You are quite literally wasting money, let alone not giving them the opportunities to grow and develop and grow in their role and things like that. But we do it because we think we're helping out, and we think they would be disappointed if we left it for them. And. So yes, so saying yes is bad. Yes, I think that could be very true.
Any other example for that specific immunisation example? Any other reasons? If you think about everyone, the practice manager, whoever, or the receptionist, whoever booked her in, the twins, the mum, your colleagues, the other patients, anyone else for whom saying yes is bad, that would be true when you think about them.
There's something about respecting the receptionists and the diary booking system. If you're just going to say yes to any patient that comes in at any point for anything. There's something about fairness. I felt particularly inclined to say yes to that mum. What if it was a patient who had another problem that wasn't quite emotive, but actually whose need was more? Well, that's not, I would say, no, I'm not seeing that person. Now, that's not very fair. And also it could cause problems in the future, because you say yes to that mum, then anytime it's just convenient for her, she shows up and it's like, well, you did it last time, so what's changed this time? So you do create a real rod for your own back if you don't have clear boundaries and that sort of thing.
So I think we keep coming back to the bigger picture, don't we, of like the system. And as you say, it's like the system versus the patient in front of you, but it doesn't need to be either or. We can hold both as important, but we're being truthful about our capacity for the sake of the whole system, and we're being compassionate to the patient who's right in front of us. What are the things that have bothered me as a patient most probably have been like rudeness or lack of respect or lack of, the way people have maybe interacted, not so much the actually you have to wait this much time to have your appointment. It's those human interactions which can leave people feeling, not seen, not respected, not cared for.
And that's really true. And actually what this has made me think of, Corrina, I hadn't really thought of much before, is I thought about the whole long-term benefit of saying no. And we often talk about, the power language mantras, the power mantras of I'm choosing to say no so that, I can be on time with the rest of my patients and triage the urgent ones better, even if the mum is upset. But actually, I haven't ever really thought about the benefits of saying no in the short term.
And what are you now saying?
Well, I'm now saying that you're right. If you don't say no, then you're doing it in a muddled way. Even the patient in front of you might not be benefiting so much from this sort of knackered doctor just fitting them in on a whim because they feel guilty. So even short term, it's not that great for the patient in front of me. In fact, the only reason I'm saying yes is for my own self-soothing of my amygdala. And I'm just wondering, though, how this works when it's not the patient you're letting down, it's your colleagues, because that seems even harder. Like if you had,
20 test results to file and you have to be somewhere, you have to leave because you've got, I don't know, parents' evening to get to, and there's these test results and literally someone else does have to do it. And you feel dreadful about dumping on other people, but they need filing. And it's a question of either I stay and do that, or I go to parents' evening, or I stay up really late tonight. But by then I've sort of missed the on-call labs, or I've missed being able to admit that patient if I haven't checked the results. You know, it's the dumping tasks on colleagues that seems to be the cardinal sin and people absolutely fear. So how would we deal with that one?
My guess, I mean, please push back immediately on this if this is not true. But my guess is in that kind of scenario, there's a give and a take where sometimes people are going to have a harder stop at this time. Other people are going to have a harder stop at this time. And again, the system kind of organizes itself where it doesn't always fall to one person unless that person is kind of unconsciously over-functioning.
And that's interesting. You're absolutely right, because actually no one would mind someone poking their head and going, I've got a parents' evening, would you mind? I would mind if one of my colleagues just left it and didn't ask me, so they weren't seen. That's less likely to happen than someone just races through it really, really quickly, doesn't feel they can ask and makes loads of mistakes or whatever, or causes extra problems. I'd have been like, why didn't you just ask me to do it? And I think what we then confuse is, because nobody minds being asked, wants to do something. Well, we like helping our colleagues out. It's when it's assumed you're going to do it all the time. And so when the system is chronically over capacity, so it's like, well, if I say no, I'm going to literally be saying no every single day that I go to work. But then that is probably a completely different kettle of fish altogether. You're not saying, well, if I say no, who's going to do it? And no one's going to do it, you know, in this acute circumstance. It's actually a chronic, there's all this work, there's this much work, there's this many people, you can't fit that much time into that much space or whatever. It's like trying to squash a balloon into a box that doesn't fit. And then absolutely, it's probably a different question altogether. Where have we got to, Corrina? If we were to summarise our discussions, well, what have you noticed in everything that I've been saying? What do you think the real core of the issue is?
I think it is questioning our assumptions, which may be shared assumptions across our profession. So they feel very much just like facts, almost like religion facts, you know, like you just, thou shalt not kill, like thou shalt not say no, thou shalt not dump stuff on colleagues. Like we need to question assumptions always. Now we may question things and come to believe the thoughts, but we have at least questioned them. And so we're consciously believing the thoughts then. We need to have that level of honesty with ourselves. We need to not make ourselves gods and assume that everything's going to fall apart without us. Because actually, if we overextend, then we will fall apart ourselves. And then we're in the same situation that we were kind of fearing in the first place. So not doing things we fear is going to lead to bad outcomes, but doing things can lead to bad outcomes, and not doing them can lead to good outcomes. So it all can flip from what we originally thought. And then I think tolerating discomfort just across the board. This is kind of my big, my own personal journey, and just across the board, how much discomfort can we tolerate? Can we sit in? Can we stay in? It feels like being in a fire when that person's not happy with me, or that patient's distraught, or like this feeling of guilt I feel like is going to actually consume my entire body. Can I just literally count? Can I count to 10 and see that I haven't burst into flames from feeling guilty, or, from whatever I've just done, or from whatever someone else is feeling towards me?
I love that. And I think where it's landed for me is we just need to stop attaching such meaning to yes or no.
And it makes us a certain kind of person, like good people. Again, you could finish that sentence. Good people say yes. Good people, or good doctors, or good nurses don't do this or do this. And we have this kind of a credo, I think is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, when actually it's like, if I could not believe that thought, I like that question. If I could no longer believe that saying no made me a selfish person, what would I be doing and where would I be? I think that's a nice way to look at it. And I think this tolerating of discomfort is something maybe I'll get you back to talk about. And I think that's one of the things you're going to talk to us about FrogFest, how to set impeccable boundaries and deal with everyone else not liking them.
Yeah, being out of favour with other people. Even just saying the words, I can feel it in my body, like my solar plexus goes, and I'm sure people listening or watching are just like, no, that's not tolerable. And so if something feels intolerable, we take all kinds of not great actions to try and avoid that feeling that's intolerable.
Yeah. And we're just kidding ourselves that we can actually avoid not people pleasing, that we can please everybody all the time. It's a complete myth.
Yes.
Even people that are incredibly nice and never do anything to upset anything and bend to everyone else's wills, well, they end up not pleasing somebody at some point.
Yes, it's completely inevitable that someone's going to not be happy with us.
Well, that's a depressing way to end it.
but because we are 2 type 7s on the Enneagram, we will always want to end with a silver lining.
Go on then, what's your silver lining?
That there is a part of us that is beyond all of this, a part of us that sits behind and beyond that need for approval, that need for security, control, all of that. There is a part of us that is beyond that. And if we can more and more live into that part of us and come from that part of us, then we're just so much wiser, and we make such wiser decisions for everyone, the system as a whole, the patients in front of us, our colleagues and ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I know Tara Brach talks about her sort of RAIN therapy, self-compassion. And I guess that wise part of you, when you notice this intolerable, I've upset them, whatever, you just sit there and you go, of course you're feeling like that. Look what you just had to put up with or do or whatever. Yeah, anyone will be feeling like that right now. Doesn't mean it's wrong. So yeah, there's that lovely quote from Rumi, and I'll just finish with that. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Thanks, Corrina. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, CorrinaGordonBarnes.com. Corrina spelled CORRINA, Gordon, GORDON, Barnes, BARNES.com, and just drop me a line in the contact section there. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn.
That's wonderful. And come and see Corrina talking and pick her brains at our next FrogFest virtual. All the links and details will be in the show notes. So Corrina, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our chat as ever, and we'll chat again soon.
Bye for now.